Okay, so thanks to some of you who come here regularly to the series, and we have actually a lot of good presentations coming up. Occasionally I do them myself, but more often I have experts to interview. Next week I'll have Carrie Jones talking about the hormone test. If you don't know me, this is me. I just took this picture last week outside my home in Arizona. It's getting to be in the hundreds here already. And I started my health career as an acupuncturist in Portland, Oregon in 2004. There I worked a few years on my own inside of the yoga studio, and then I opened a clinic, and we had naturopaths, chiropractors, massage therapists, acupuncturists. I did that for 10 years. But during that time, my health wasn't the best, and my Chinese medicine toolbox wasn't enough. Not to say Chinese medicine isn't enough, but I wasn't finding what I needed in that toolbox. And I started working with a life coach and learning about nutrition, making a lot of changes in my habits, but still having irregular periods. We're going to talk more about some of that later. It's a lot of stuff. And many years later, I found out I had toxic mold in my home. And that really gave me the impetus to pull toxins and detox into my practice more, because it's so important to work on the gut and the hormones and everything, but if you are missing that toxin piece, you could really stay sick. So I was very busy in my clinic, working a lot of hours, but kind of slowly transitioning into wanting to be online, studying functional medicine. So some of you have been around for a while. I did more women's health previously. I did fertility work. But then again, I really wanted to bring the detox piece in, which can still be very much relevant to fertility and hormones. So we really do a kind of a well-rounded functional medicine approach online now. So why test? This actually reminds me too of the complaint we got today about some supplements. The digestive system is very complicated, and it's also a very frustrating area of symptomatology. Like, you're everyday bloated, you're worrying about when are you going to poop, when are you going to have a bathroom, or like I said, it could be other symptoms as well. And it's just hard to know, like, what is it? Where should I start? Sometimes doing some food elimination can be helpful, but many of you on the call already take a lot of foods out of your diet, already eat superfoods. That's kind of our community. And you still might not be getting, good digestion. So doing a GI map test really just lets you see what's going on in there, and then lets you have a treatment protocol that's focused. And then you always get a consultation with us with that report. And sometimes we want you to go check something else potentially in your home, in your lifestyle, or another test. Although I will say, if you're going to run one test, like, maybe just do this one, because everybody's got stuff in their gut. And it's so many things affect the gut. If you have mold, and we'll talk about this later, you probably have a gut issue. And you can't just work on the mold, you also have to work on your gut. So I really think the GI map, like, if you only do one test, is such a strong test to run. Because sometimes people start with our hormone test, which is great, but it kind of goes deeper than that. And the GI map is really getting to some root cause of, like, how do you process hormones? How do you detoxify hormones? That kind of thing. What else is stressing your body? So I just think it's such a great root cause test. You can retest and then know what's working or not working in your protocol, which is really nice and clear, right? We're not just guessing. We want you to get your relief from symptoms. That's important. I will say sometimes the gut, sometimes you'll get a lot of relief, and sometimes it's actually more like just tilling the soil, and it's not the thing that's gonna like take you to that last 20% of like symptom relief, but it's gonna lay the groundwork so that when you do things, take supplements, make further changes, that it kind of sticks, if that makes sense. And then certainly working on your gut can improve overall health, because the gut is just like the basis of so many things. So we're talking about, gut and immunity right now. Kind of 70 to 80% of immune cells are actually in your gut. So do you need to have a healthy gut? Yeah, it's probably pretty important. And there's some research kind of getting started around COVID and this, but I don't think it's fully completed. But Kieran Christian mentioned some of that in our webinar a few weeks ago. So some of the symptoms could be bloating. That's a real common one we hear. Brain fog, kind of because of the inflammation. Your brain and your gut are really very much connected. If you've got a leaky gut, there's a chance you've got a leaky brain as well. If you got inflamed gut, inflamed brain. And sometimes I feel like there's so much emphasis on leaky gut, and there really should be more emphasis on inflamed gut. They're kind of two sides of a same coin, but everyone always talks about leaky gut for some reason. Skin stuff I mentioned, bowel changes, food intolerance are really common, and just pain and headaches. I feel like I'm seeing more clients with chronic pain issues lately. Again, even though they're trying to eat healthy, and that could just be some of the inflammation that's being caused here. There's so much activity happening in the gut, and if there's inflammation being caused from there, it's going to be firing in other places, most likely. I was looking for a picture of a belly, and I found this one, and I guess this individual actually had some bowel surgery and some things removed because they had Crohn's disease that wasn't addressed for many years. So, this is really what we definitely want to avoid, right? It's like ignoring stuff to the point that you got to get your guts cut out. So this is the test we're going to talk about today. This is what it looks like. I meant to show you a kit, but I can't find one in my house. I thought I had one. But it comes in a box like this. We mail it from our warehouse, and it's got inside like a little vial, like a plate kind of thing you poop into, some gloves. It's pretty, not self-explanatory. There's good instructions. It's not very hard to do. Is it a little gross? Yeah, it's a little gross, but that's just sort of, part of the deal. You just have to handle your poop a little bit, but you got gloves on. So, we don't do a lot of international shipping, but it is possible. You just don't purchase directly from our shop. Just contact us if you are outside the US, because there can potentially be, we can't ship from everywhere, and there's a lot of special guidelines. So we try to focus mostly on the US. I really like this test. I've been using it the whole time I've been practicing. The number of markers you get is really impressive. It would be hard for me to change tests, and I'm so happy with this test. The report is very clear, and many of them are not. The testing type, I think, is very good, and we're going to learn more about that. So this is a quantitative PCR test. It's measuring DNA, and I think RNA too, of different organisms, and it's able to multiply them so it can find them better. That's kind of the Q part of this PCR. You may have heard of PCR as they're talking about COVID testing. It's like one of the ways to test. So it's not an antibody test, although there are a couple of antibodies tested. We'll see later, but mostly it's testing for the presence of certain pathogens. So it doesn't need to be like a big piece of it, as long as there's a little DNA in there. It'll catch it. So you do sample from like various places in your stool. and could something be missed? Potentially, yes. But, also we see a lot of things on the test, generally speaking. So, but yeah, I mean, it is a sample. So, probably if you wanted to get the most results, you sample 4 times in a month or something, but that's quite costly. I made a couple slides based on just understanding this technique because I kind of wanted to learn it too. So if you want to take a moment to kind of read it over. So it sounds like the qPCR isn't necessarily more accurate. It's just like an advanced way to get more than one organism tested and sort of find more. So this qPCR is only being done with Diagnostic Solutions GI map, according to them. They're the only ones who does it. And they're saying that it is more sensitive and then it's able to get quantity more. And then they're saying it is reproducible. So I think that that's saying they've done some samples like twice and they get the same results and that kind of a thing. So I have a couple slides here on what it covers, but I think it'll be a little better when you see the test results. So it's not covering everything. I want that. Like it's covering about 12 worms and parasites. There are more than that. So it's not covering every parasite in the whole world, but I'm assuming they pick some of the most common ones. A lot of stuff on bacteria. There is an optional leaky gut marker with zonulin, but there's also some other markers of gut health for sure. Some viruses are covered, although this isn't necessarily like the best way to test for viruses, but it's, just like, why not? Let's get lots of stuff in here. So sometimes viruses could be picked up. Also, it's testing for H. pylori and to tell you if it's a type of H. pylori that could become cancerous and what antibiotics the H. pylori might be resistant to if you went that type of treatment route. Testing for candida and other yeasts, again, not the best way to test for them, but if they are very dominant, they will show up on a GI map. So if I see them there, it's like you got a real problem. In other words, testing some enzyme production, blood in the stool, one type of gluten antibody. This is not the only way to be sensitive to gluten, though. Immune mucosal integrity. So this last one is kind of telling you about your immune system, but also that this is also sort of a marker of leaky gut, because if this is very thin, you're not getting much protection, and that is included in the test. Oh, I thought this had a title, but I guess it doesn't. So this is just a little bit about my own health history, because we're about to look at 2 of my own test results. And just kind of like, you can see, I had a pretty stressful year in 2003. I should add to that list, I got married. Not got married, got pregnant. It was a really busy year for me, so my stress was high. And then I had a baby and, I was very hormonally off. I felt like afterwards, a lot of anxiety, a lot of insomnia, really like needing to address it. And so I would say for several years, I was, making bone broth, eating right, like trying to do all the things, but I still had like chronic back pain, I get infections a lot. And later I learned I had chronic Epstein-Barr virus, but I would just get sick like so often sometimes. I had pink eye, like just everything. And it wasn't always like I was still working, but I was stressed. And I definitely didn't practice like good stress management. And I just, I was like where I think a lot of people are, like, okay, I'm trying to do the right thing, but like nothing is quite doing it. But then fall 2015, I was finishing my functional medicine course, doing some of the protocols from that, feeling pretty good, ready to kind of move into my online business. And then after Thanksgiving, I got strep throat, like first time I needed antibiotics in like 20 years. I didn't recover. My gut was wrecked. I was exhausted, like so exhausted. And I started going to get IV vitamins and stuff, and nothing helped. I did a detox, that didn't help. And finally, in the process of that, we found out we had toxic mold in the home I had been living in for 9 years, maybe. But if you're wondering about mold yourself or have mold, it's just sort of one trigger. So I think that there's just a combination of factors right then, like push me over the edge. But I certainly wasn't doing well in that toxic moldy house for many years. This is sort of another ball of wax I'm getting into it. I'm going to pause here and go to show you my test results. I'm going to stop sharing a sec. And I know some little comments and questions are coming in, but I'm going to just keep showing you so we have some kind of through line here. So this was in 2017. So this was not exactly when I found it, but it was a little over a year later, and I still wasn't doing that great. I had made some progress, got it out of a moldy environment, but I was still tired. I was still kind of virally, just immune stuff, lots of anxiety, lots of stress. And I think I ran this because I had just interviewed, this is what happened. I had just interviewed Dr. Todd Watts, who's like a parasite expert. And we talked about parasites. This was for my old podcast. And literally, and he was saying how everyone has parasites. So literally the next day I went to the bathroom, and in my stool, I saw like a long noodle. And I was like, oh, it's like a pad thai noodle. And I'm like, wait, I didn't have any pad thai yesterday. And I was like, oh, I wonder if that's a worm. So I literally picked it out of my stool and saved it, because that's the kind of person I am. And I still never got like an accurate, reading of what that worm was, but I did run this test and I had a parasite. So I'll show you that. Not all parasites are going to be found visually, and sometimes if you're not looking, you could also just miss them that way. So this first page of the test, and now this is, I want to point out, this is 2017, so the test looks quite different now. Now it's 5 pages long, and it was only 3 pages. This first page is sort of acute infections usually, but they can become chronic too, like Giardia. I've seen positive on people. So it's kind of like something still kicking around that shouldn't be in there anymore. Interestingly, I used to have H. pylori, and when I got strep throat, I had them just go ahead and give me some antibiotics for the H. pylori while they were in there, which was really hard on me, but it did kill the H. pylori. My normal flora looked okay. There's a lot more flora on it now. And I really only showed one opportunistic bacteria as high at the time. Oh shoot, I used a highlighter on here, but I guess it just did it in black and white. Here's the parasite I had, Dientamoeba fragilis. And I was positive for Candida, which again, if it's found here, that means there's a lot of it in your body. And this section wasn't so hot. My secretory IgA was low, and my beta-glucuronidase, which is an enzyme that when elevated, breaks apart bonds of toxins moving out of the body, so they get recirculated. So it's most known for re-releasing estrogen, but it can re-release any toxin back into circulation. But mostly we just treat this by treating all the infections and stuff. And then this enzyme will come down. So I did not retest in 6 months. I think in 6 months I was moving to Arizona and blah, blah, blah. I didn't even treat the parasites right away, to be honest. It took me a while to get to it. But I did finally run another test a couple of years later. And this is more like what the test looks like nowadays. So still negative on this first page. Still negative for H. pylori. You can see now there's quite a bit more friendly bacteria, including this Faecalibacterium, which is a keystone strain, I think. So I was just low in one good flora. And these are two big categories of bacteria, Bacteroides, Firmicutes. They mostly do this for the ratio. I guess I'm a little technically high in one, but it's kind of like no big deal. That old bacteria overgrowth I had was gone and everything else was in range. The Candida was gone on this test, although I still have some Candida, just not in such a level that it's going to show up here anymore. So here's a couple of viruses. I do have Epstein-Barr viruses. It didn't show up in my stool. Again, this is not the best way to test it. You've got to have a pretty bad infection in your gut for it to show up here because it's a stool test, right? And the parasite is gone. Nothing detected, no worms. My beta-glucuronidase came down by like half. Secretory IgA in normal range, which honestly I don't see much. And now they've had the zonulin test as an option, and I was in range. Not showing any sensitivity to gluten, which I'm pretty good at avoiding, but we all get a little exposed, but I am sensitive to gluten, so just know this is just one marker. This isn't like an invitation to eat gluten. And this last page just shows if you're going to want to test or treat H. pylori with antibiotics, are any of them going to not work for you? So the test has gotten a lot longer. This whole section at the end is kind of gut function, enzymes, kind of fat digestion, blood and stool would be something I more send you to a gastroenterologist. Someone mentioned the calprotectin being high when there's a lot of inflammation in the gut. So there's a section on parasite and worms, a little bit of viruses, some yeast. Oh, this is an interesting section I didn't talk about. So all these bacteria have some association with triggering potentially autoimmunity. So I like to look at all of these. A lot of them have to do with like rheumatoid arthritis. This last one is kind of a hodgepodge of like a lot of different things. Frankly, I don't see these with a person who has rheumatoid arthritis. Like, I haven't seen a lot of like clear correlations, but to me, if they're saying these could trigger autoimmunity, you want to keep them low. You want to keep them, I'd say not detected at all or in range. So here was the opportunistic bacteria. I'm just kind of working backwards and giving you a better sense. So this section has gotten a lot bigger too. So it's okay to have, bad bugs, so to speak, as long as like they're not overgrown and you have lots of variety of population of good bugs. And this isn't all the good bugs either, but it's still a lot of information. H. pylori, can be helpful because it really can mess up your digestion by lowering stomach acid and causing some stress on the body, and it can potentially turn into cancer. And then we have this first page, which, could be good if you have some acute, strange situation going on. But mostly, people are coming in with chronic stuff. But occasionally we do see something on here. And then I just kind of say, you're just, things are just dysbiotic. And we need to boost immunity and gut health. It's mostly how I deal with that. Let me see if there's any. So Veronica, we also just started to offer an Epstein-Barr blood test. So you can see that on our site. Negative DL means it's not detected. Okay. Let me go back to the slides and then I'll take a few more questions. So this is sort of my before and after. And I really wanted to share this because I think that many people feel like they're never going to get over their gut stuff. And I was definitely like gut girl. I had, do I have a slide for this? Oh no, I wrote it in an email that is coming out soon. I had an ulcer in junior high. Then I lived in South America for a year, and I definitely think I got parasites there. I became really constipated, and then that kind of stopped. But then I got IBS, and I had loose stool for many years. I didn't really know about gluten and dairy, and I cut those out. I've had just a lot of stuff. And then I had mold, so my gut became leaky and all these things. And now, like, look how much better my test is. Like, literally all those things were gone. So yes, it's a work. Honestly, pooping in a plate is the easy part. Taking supplements for a long time on a schedule is harder. But it's worth it, I think. So it's just so foundational for your health. So here's some of the things that you can do for protocol. The Mega Mycobalance is a Candida formula you're supposed to use for 6 weeks. I think it's quite strong, but sometimes you need to mix other things into the protocol. Candida is opportunistic, so you really have to kill off other things first before you get to the Candida, or at the same time. So our parasite kit right now has the Para 1, which is Mimosa pudica herb, and then the Para 2 is like a kind of a collection of different herbs. And then we sell it with the GI Detox, which is a binder. I would recommend getting the Mega Mucosa as well because it's very soothing. You don't have to know you have parasites to do a parasite cleanse, but if you decide to do it without testing, I usually say to do it for 2 months and then take a break when it's the new moon, when the moon is dark, and definitely be doing it during the full moon when parasites are more active. Biocidin is a tincture we use for different unfriendly bacteria pretty often. Low secretory IgA, the Mega IgG, and the Mega Mucosa, especially the Mega Mucosa for this, will rebuild that layer. But also having enough friendly bacteria like the Megaspore helps grow friendly mucosa. So that's another reason your mucosa can be low. And then the prebiotic fiber will feed the friendly bacteria. Also, I personally think just managing stress is important. And then working on like these infections and stuff. I mean, why is the immune system beat down? I think it's, various reasons. And then that high beta glucuronidase that I had, there are some supplemental ways to treat that, like calcium G glucarate, but I mostly don't give it because what we're mainly doing here is rehabilitating the gut, taking away pathogens, rebuilding the gut. reducing anything that irritates the gut. And then the mega omega is anti-inflammatory for the gut. So if you're having that high calprotectin, you're just having irritation in the gut. The mega mucosa, which just came back in stock, is amazing for this irritation. So this is a webinar really encouraging you to test, right? To know what you're treating, so you don't take stuff and then be like, that didn't work. But if you're not at the point where you're ready to test, we still through tomorrow have $10 off all these mega products with the code MEGA10 if you just want to try one of these products. So this is just a visual on what some of the products look like. And usually if people, want to retest, which is of course ideal, but not cheap, although we do give you a discount to retest, at least 6 months out is what I say, to kill stuff off, rebuild the gut, and then just kind of let it sit for a bit. The Big 3 test is also on sale right now, and this includes the GI map, the Dutch hormone panel, and the Thyroid Plus blood labs. It's really just a nice, like, ultra checkup on a lot of your body systems. Because like I mentioned earlier, sometimes you're like, oh, it's my hormones. But then I'm like, I really wish we knew about your gut, or I really wish I knew what your thyroid was doing or your blood sugar was doing. So this is just a lot in one, and it kind of sounds expensive, but it's also not really that expensive because you get 90 minutes with me personally, and you get 3 really amazing tests. Then the mold and toxins test, I would say, is a really nice complement to the gut test, because if you think you have mold, or you have mold or whatever, it's going to be messing up your gut. So you can get the gut test and the mold test together, or it's actually going on sale next month. Next month is toxin month, so you could get a gut test and then get a mold test. So every time we kind of feature a test, we put it on sale, usually $50 off. So this one is $50 off, so it makes it $497 with a consultation. You can add in the zonulin test for $55 if you want. The zonulin is an enzyme that, when it's high, it's loosening the tight junctions of the gut. So it's a marker of leaky gut. The only little problem is the number goes up and down. So you could get a little bit of falsy false, but I think it's still interesting. I prefer when people run it. And since it's over $97, it's always going to be free to ship. Over $97, we usually have a gift in there for you. And then we really give you detailed protocol. I actually usually give like a 4-month protocol. And I'm like, come back in 2 months. So we don't spoon feed you. I really give it to you. So you can go after it. We give you a coupon code. I think it's a great test. It may be my favorite test of all the tests, because it's so foundational. It's like so many people have an issue here, and no matter what else you're treating, it's probably in play. Okay, so that's all my slides. So I will open it up to more questions. So yes, Veronica, high in anti-gliadin. So that's actually measuring in like a gluten protein, a wheat protein antibody. Again, it's only one way to test for gluten sensitivity, but there are some people I test. I can remember a husband who got wrangled into this. He still very much had gluten like twice a day. And I'm like, you're sensitive to gluten and you have a million other things going on in your gut. Anna is asking, well, what if I do everything and test everything and then I sort of fall off the wagon? Yeah, I mean, I said this in my video with Karan, and I'll say it again, like, you just saw my test. I guess it was from last summer, but nobody's perfect. So I just take stuff as needed. Like, honestly, right now with this COVID and like trying to keep my business together, I'm really in my head way too much, and that is affecting my digestion. So I just need, like, I can sort of read my body now and kind of tell what supplements I need. So I'm taking some of the Mega Guard for that. I'm taking some Mega Mucosa. Like, I just take what I need, like when I need it. I've taken, you know, a little extra pre-fiber or Megaspore because of the COVID, but I don't take those normally. Um, it's not like you get on the protocol and you have to stay on it. And it's also not like, okay, now you're set for life, you know. I just had a client recently and she was um, explaining or kind of mentioning like when her dad got sick with Alzheimer's and then died, what a hard time that was for her. And she had kids, and of course her health went, you know, like life happens sometimes, and then we have to kind of rebuild our health again. But every time we build up, we get smarter. Um, so I say that I used to run like dietary cleanses too. And okay, are you going to stay on the cleanse forever? No, but you're going to know how good you feel on the cleanse. And then later, if you fall off the wagon, you're like, oh, remember how good I felt on that cleanse? Like, let me start like doing some of that stuff again. So it's just, it's not, yeah, it's not permanent, which I think it's not a bad idea to run some tests, you know, every few years and like see where you stand. But on the other hand, if you're working on lots of things at once, like I'm also working on mold or my hormones or this inflammation, like it does start to come together and stays more solid, right? So like if I had stayed in that moldy house and stayed in that clinic that stressed me out, I don't think my gut would be looking as nice as it does now, but I've been working on all the things together. And so my gut is holding up, which is great. And so I definitely want to be like poster child. Like I was, you know, ulcer at age 12, you know, IBS all through school. Like I had a lot of issues. So I know that if I can get better, other people can get better too. And then you just know yourself, you listen to your body. And if you eat poorly or you become stressed or some people are going to get COVID and it's going to go to your gut. We talked about on the webinar with Kieran, doing the Mega Omega, doing the Megaspore, doing the Mega IgG. You know, if you know the tools, then you can use the tools. So that's my little lecture on that. Katie said her steatocrit was high. That's fat showing in the stool, so fat wasn't digested. Katie, you might want to do enzymes and bitters, kind of probably some of both. Bitters are nice because they move some of the bile. So some of your fat breakdown problem is the bile not moving. The Mega Guard is actually good for that as well. And just working on inflammation in the gut, because there's inflammation in that gut lining, sort of like there's not as much enzymes coming through. We just learned that on my webinar with Reed last week. So the trouble is you don't digest fat well. So so later maybe you do more Mega Omega, but other things that can reduce inflammation are like the pre-fiber, the probiotics. But yeah, I would, Katie, read that guide I posted earlier. Let me go repost it, and then go into it and get the top-down digestive guide. And then I'm curious, you guys who are running it, are you just running it on your own, or did you have some practitioner help you with it? Because I think that's pretty important. Yeah, read the guide and like think about your own digestion and like your own history and where you might need support. So SIBO, this isn't exactly a test for SIBO, but it can be a little suggestive of SIBO. The easiest way to define SIBO is really regular bloating that happens basically every day and that you end the day like quite bloated. So you wake up and you feel okay, and then it gets worse as the day goes on, and it seems like every food triggers it, or you have to just eat very specific things. This is bacterial overgrowth in the small intestine. But some of it has to do with transit time. Why is this stuff getting stuck in the small intestine? Some of it has to do with bile flow. We talked about this in that video a few weeks ago. Some of it has to do with the brain. Some of it had to do with infections in the lower bowels, which is what we test with the GI map. So the MegaGuard can be good for it, but like maybe reading my brain ebook and seeing if that resonates with you, anything you need to address there. You know, is there mold involved? So this isn't a direct SIBO test. That would be more of a breath test. But it just, if someone's telling me, oh, I'm really bloated, then I just kind of consider that with my protocol, and it's just sort of all in one. What would you do for high C reactive protein? Like, I think she's asking a gluten and dairy-free diet or what? There's a lot of things that could be causing a high C reactive protein. So I think that's great, you know, a bigger conversation than just what you're eating. But in general, let me just give you guys all this stuff real quick. 1 second. Okay, so this is a page on my site called Freebies. Here's this digestive guide I've mentioned. Here's the brain guide. Here's a mold supplements guide. And here's the diet guide. This just came out recently. This is an anti-inflammatory kind of microbiome friendly diet. So you can just go on here and get that guide. This is also a really good guide about side effects. So as you have an unhealthy gut and then you add in strong things to fix it, you know, you could get more bloated, you could get a headache, you could have this or that, you can get constipated. So just know that's pretty normal and don't freak out about it. And just, you know, if you put information in, you're going to get a result. That's actually a good thing. Just like, say you want to take up jogging. This is my best analogy. Let's say you want to take up running, and so you go running, and the next day you're so sore. And you don't need to say, oh, that running is so stupid, like I'm never doing it again. Your body's not used to running and you just went running. So you probably shouldn't run so far, or you should take a Epsom salt bath or whatever. That's just like what happens when you try to change the body. So we have this guide here for you. You know, if you do a private with us, we're gonna, like, you know, handhold you a little more. But if you're just doing supplements, that would be there. Okay. And let me go back a minute to share. Okay, so I'll just tell you how to get on the shop too. And I'll put this in the. So the coaching is where we have all the labs and stuff. But, you know, you'll also see whatever's on special right now on this specials page. So let's see, it's Thursday at 2 where I am. These should go out tomorrow, by tomorrow at the latest if you order today, and then you can just get on it. And then we ask you to, you know, get off oil of oregano and get off enzymes and stuff just for a short amount of time before you test. Oh, Katie, you ordered them from us. You're getting like a sneak preview. Nikki was saying she has a sluggish gallbladder. Yeah, I mean, I love the MegaGuard for that. I love bitters. I also love the work of Anne Louise Gittleman. She talks a lot about the liver gallbladder. Okay, a few more questions in the Q&A. So Rose, I put the link to the GI map test in the chat, if you can see the chat. And somebody asked parasites or worms. I think we covered that. So about 12 different parasites and worms are on there. Jan, that old test wouldn't give the numerical amounts of candida. So if it said nothing, that would mean not detectable, and low meant like a low level of candida. Nikki, I hope I covered the SIBO enough for you. Jan, yeah, I like that MAP diet I made, but it's not exactly an elimination diet, but it kind of is because you eliminate inflammatory foods. But you know, a traditional elimination diet, you're usually eliminating corn, wheat, dairy, egg, soy. I would say those are like the biggest. And then they may have you eliminate, if you really did it like systematically, like chocolate, tea, certain fruits, nuts. There's a book called, I think it's just called The Elimination Diet by Tom Malterre, Malterre, that he goes over that. There's some food sensitivity testing that I like that we don't offer right now, because to be honest, I'd rather people do this test than the food sensitivity test, because I like it, and I think it can be helpful. But if you're sensitive to a lot of foods beyond the really obvious inflammatory ones, sometimes that can be a little genetic. But if you're sensitive to just too many foods, it's because your digestion's off. Something's just off. So I'd rather you run this test and talk to us. So many people come to us and they're avoiding like so many foods, and that's not really healthy either. We need to get a lot of fibers to feed our bacteria. So I really try to move you into a more diverse diet rather than a less one. So that's kind of what I focus on. Although I think there's some things that really just aren't that great for us. I think that modern gluten is, you know, super long protein, and it's hard to break down. Modern dairy is, you know, usually pasteurized, so just hard to digest. Suzette, it's a half an hour. Most of our consults are only a half an hour because we just kind of dive into it and we have everything ready for you. But the big three is actually 90 minutes, so it's a really long time to talk. So it's either with me or Coach Mickey, who some of you may have met already, and she's really great. Awesome. Well, we're exactly at 1 hour. Thank you so much, everyone. I'll take any last questions if you've got some, but yeah, it was great. I'm realizing I really love talking about the gut. I really love educating. It is such a complex topic, and so I love to see people on these sessions to really like look at your gut in particular, really see what's in there. It's like it's like fortune telling that you, oh, what's this in here? And like, what was her name? Katie was talking about her daughter, and like, you just don't really know what's there till you see it. And sometimes it's better than you thought, sometimes it's worse than you thought, but at least you know. Mary Ellen, for SIBO, I recommend the Mega Guard. I like 2 at lunch, 2 at dinner, probably for 2 months. And then you may need to do some other things too for your brain. You might take some enzymes, keep the bowel moving. So I would definitely read that guide, that GI map guide. Did I put this in the, let me put the freebies up again. So we have lots of guides that I talked about in this freebies page. So if you're still kind of investigating, or you already had a test somewhere else, you can go. If you had a test that you want us to look at, we offer a session for that too, and it's on sale. It's called the Past Labs Review, and it's on that same private coaching page. So I'll put that link in here. So here's the free books if you want to get a certain book. And then the if you're on here and you had a test run, sometimes I find that people had a test run by someone who really wasn't that experienced reading tests. So then they don't really like, they kind of, you know, got a test and didn't really know what to do with it. So Nikki, you're saying your SIBO always returns. So you really want to like investigate the root cause of that. Is it like a motility issue? I would really read that brain book that we have. The mold test, Veronica, is a urine test, and I can't remember how much it costs. Let's go see. So it's normally $495, and so it'll be $445 next month. And you know, it always comes with a review with us and recommendations with us. The only thing that's a blood test for us is the thyroid test, because you can't test that any other way. Great. Well, thanks again, everyone. Any last questions, you can reach out to our customer service. But this should be on sale through Monday, I think we decided. And we'll send the replay on Saturday. So if you're late or you want to hear it again, we'll have it going back out. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it. Have a great afternoon.